All right. Oh, people are streaming in. We're finally here. It's so exciting. We started talking about this back in the fall, so it's exciting to finally be having a chance to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's nice to see you here, Susan.
Yeah, I know. It's great to see you. It looks kind of sunny there wherever you are. Is it a sunny day, sunny winter day, or?
Well, yeah, you know, they say that it's always sunny in Philadelphia. So it is sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm like,
What?
got it. Yep.
The TV show.
Yes. Yeah, the TV. I was like, wait a minute, that's the TV show, right? I never
Yeah, yeah,
got to
yeah.
see that TV show.
It's good. It's pretty funny. You should check it out. There's a lot of
Is it
episodes.
is it really irreverent? It's funny, right?
It's funny. Like I mean, yeah, it's funny. But yeah, it's usually not always sunny in Philly. It was raining yesterday, but it's sunny today, so that's exciting. Where are you at? New
New
York
York.
or
Yeah, we're sunny today too. Yep. We've had a lot of rain, which I'm like, give me the
same,
snow. I don't want rain in the winter. I want snow. I'm an
right?
East Coaster. Like,
Same.
give me the flakes. The other day my husband was like, look, it's snowing. And I looked outside and I'm like, okay, I have to squint to see the flakes. That is not
Also,
snow.
better than rain though. Better than like gloomy rain.
I would rather have snow in the winter rather than rain,
Yeah,
like,
same,
so we're getting a lot of rain. I don't think we've really had proper snow at all this year, but maybe next
same.
week. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Just to, yeah, yeah. I like cozy season, sweaters and all of that. So I'm not mad about it. I'm just letting a couple other folks come in here before we get started.
Sounds good.
Hang on a minute. I just noticed that I am, I just popped my screen paused there. So give me 1 minute. I'm going to do something so that to make sure that that I don't pause in the middle of our conversation. Just optimize some stuff on my screen here, on my computer, I should say.
Some high tech things going on.
Yes, very high tech things going on here. Closing the millions of tabs I have open.
Yeah, I feel you.
I use it's like the funnel one tab, I think it's called. That's what it looks like. I'm constantly using it. And then of course I forget them all the time. So I'm like, okay, it's probably good that I just close them up. Yeah. All right, very good. I think that we're in good shape. So we're going to get started. So thank you for joining and welcome to LeadDev Bookmarked. LeadDev is a global community of engineering leaders who come together to discuss all things leadership, teams, tools, and tech. Bookmarked is our monthly book club that takes place on the first Tuesday of every month. And we're adding Leemay in this week. Our sessions cover an array of engineering and leadership books that our awesome LeadDev audience can draw insights and practical experiences from. I'm Suzan Bond, and I'm the moderator for Bookmarked. I'm a former COO of a scaling startup, an executive coach, and a leadership consultant. My specialty is tech leaders. You can find me on Twitter at my name, Suzan Bond. Today we'll be talking about exploring A/B testing. If you have questions for Leemay, please pop them in the Q&A feature on Zoom, and I'll be sure to take care of them and ask Leemay. So let me introduce our awesome author. Leemay Nassery is an engineering leader at Spotify. Before Spotify, she led data engineering, excuse me. I'm so excited. And personalization efforts at Etsy, Dropbox, and Comcast. Leemay is passionate about tying engineering to business and user impact while keeping her team's career growth at the foremost. So excited to have you here, Leemay. We've talked several times. Yeah. So I would just love to know, what made you write this book? What was sort of the genesis of it? How did it come to be?
I love this question. So I'd say it's an artifact of my time actually at Comcast. So this book was heavily influenced by my experience of leading a personalization team at Comcast. Long story short, we built personalization features for a video product, but those features didn't really see the light of day. They were built. A lot of time was spent with them on development stage, QA'd, They went to production, but users didn't engage with them. And it's not because like users saw it and just thought, oh, this personalization feature is garbage. It was more so that they never actually really got added to the product. So they were available, but not integrated into the product. And that's an artifact of the platform not really being trusted. Like, I guess like we knew personalization was needed, but we didn't trust the algorithms or trust the engineering to scale to support those features. So at some point, we had this grand idea to build a For You homepage, because all products at this point have a personalized For You homepage. Like open your phone, open your like TV streaming app, every product has a For You homepage. But then we didn't know how to figure out how to put that in production. And so what we thought was, maybe if we proved our belief in this feature, then people would, then product would allow us to integrate it. And that's where we use A/B testing as our Trojan horse. So we didn't have a sophisticated A/B testing platform at the time. We actually had nothing, but we were building a For You homepage that relied on this experimentation evaluation methodology. So we realized we got to build one. So we started from scratch. And that's what this book is all about, is you can actually build an A/B testing platform with very little. It's a practical approach to A/B testing.
I love that. I just want to notice what I want to go back to one thing you said, which is you used A/B testing as a Trojan horse. I don't think I've ever heard that before. Can you just say a little bit more about what you mean by that? Because it's so cool. I love the idea.
Yeah. So like, let's say you have an idea and it's a super grand idea that your whole team believes in, but business and products don't really believe in that idea. Like, how can you sneak it into production on just a subset of users to get some data to measure the effectiveness? You can do that with A/B testing. But the struggle at this point was we didn't have an A/B testing platform, and that's what this book is about. But the second theme is, if you believe an idea and you want to measure the effectiveness of it, use A/B testing to sneak it in and to get a sense if your prediction or your hypothesis is correct.
That's already awesome. Already learning new things. So who is this book for? Like, who did you write it for? Who might get benefit from it?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with who it's not for, and then we can talk about who it's for. So I'd say this book is not for the Netflix or Spotify humans that have a vast A/B testing platform that scales for millions of users. It's for everyone else, literally everyone else. Like, referring back to my time at Comcast, you wouldn't think Comcast, very big company, a lot of users, millions of users, doesn't have an A/B testing platform, but we didn't at the time. And so this is for all the companies, big or small, that need to get started but don't know how to approach it. Like, what is a practical way to just move forward with trying to adopt this evaluation method in your product development lifecycle?
And I'm just curious. I mean, I think I can think about it, but I'd love to just know a little bit more about why is it not for Spotify or the Netflix,
Netflix
versus everybody else? Like, what's the distinction there that you're making? Just,
That's a good question. So I'd say this book is more about like the practical, like the fundamentals, like the anatomy of an A/B test. This is what a basic A/B test is composed of. These are the different types of tests. There's a superiority test versus non-inferiority. There's an equivalent test. There's whether to decide to build versus buy your A/B testing platform. There's how to cultivate. There's a chapter about cultivating an experimentation-driven culture. Netflix and Spotify historically have that already, but most of us do not. Like, from my experience working at, again, like a company like Comcast that has video products, that has internet products, you'd think that a big company like that would have it. We didn't at the time. And so the biggest struggle was, how do we get started? What's like one step forward that we could make to build the foundation?
Yeah. So what I hear is like, it's for folks who are maybe earlier in their journey around, testing in the company, rather than we already have robust systems. Like, how do we get started? Problems. Right. Totally different problems. Like, maybe it's fledgling, or they have something, but it's not really working, or standardized, or embedded.
Or they're trying to figure out like how many more tests can they run at once. Like, the problems are very different versus like trying to take a practical approach to even be able to do this.
Okay, got it. Great. Thank you for answering that. So, I mean, Comcast seems like a very big project. I would love to know, what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing I learned, which is why I wrote this book, is that you can get so much done with very little. Like, you don't need a big experimentation organization to get started. We had, at the time when we built our A/B testing platform to support this Trojan horse, strategy of putting the For You homepage in front of users to get data to, support the case. We had like, I'm pretty sure 3 engineers built our A/B testing platform, just 3, which is not a lot. We had a front-end developer that built the self-service tooling so that folks could go in and say, this is the start date, this is the end date of my experiment. Super simple. Then we had a couple of engineers that worked on the back-end data engineering aspects that own the orchestration layers to be able to tag users so that this user gets this feature and this user is in the control. And that's it. Like, we did not go into sophisticated metrics. We did not go into like interleaving or casual inference or like all these fancy A/B testing terminology, because it just wasn't the right time. The biggest thing is just start simple and get started. And you can do so with like very few engineers, which is key.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think we could think about a company as big as Comcast. I don't know how big the engineering department was at the time, but we might think it had to be really big and robust. We have to throw a lot of effort at it to get started.
And we didn't, which is the cool part.
Yeah, that's very cool. I want to know a tiny bit more, like, how long was the process, would you say, to really, I know.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. So how do I answer this? But our first A/B test took a year, and that may seem like super daunting, like spending a year on running one A/B test, but it wasn't because of the engineering. Like, the engineering systems worked. It was more like the project culture, the organizational culture to accept data-driven decisions, or at least accept data to influence those decisions. So this test, I believe it started like in October, the For You test. Again, like, just let's put the For You homepage in front of a few users. Let's see our engagement metrics. Let's see our project metrics, our business metrics they have. Let's see the effect from this new feature on those important data points. And then, like, after 2 months, we like collected data and we're like, it looks good. But that wasn't enough. Like, sometimes data isn't enough, and it takes time to change the way we do things and process. And a lot of A/B testing, it's not just about the platform, but it's also about the process change that happens, and there's emotions behind it. Like, you could be wrong with your feature or your hypothesis, or you could be right, but it's someone else was like totally against it. So it took a year for our first A/B test to launch, again, not because of the platform, but because it took time to gain trust.
Right.
From other folks that, hey, this works. A/B testing is good and data is good, and we should launch this. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we think like the engineering side is the hardest part or whatever, but it's the organizational, it's the culture. It's, people might feel anxious about adding something to the process, or what does it mean for my job, and then the work that I do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, everything you said was exactly, I mean, you said it better. Like, there's so much more to it. There's a lot of emotions behind it. Like, if this feature goes to production, what happens to what was there before? And what was there before was that some other team that owned it. So it's a huge, and before A/B testing, if changes go to production because the loudest voice in the room says this should go to production, it's like a jarring experience to navigate, but it's possible.
Well, and I think I think it's important. I mean, my background is in org development, so I think a lot about that organizational layer, and it's something I bang the drum beat of a lot, because I think we forget that, and we forget. I love that you say emotional. There are emotions. We are human, and the emotions might surprise us, that we have to navigate those emotions.
Totally. Like, I can give an example of that. I was in a meeting presenting. I was in a meeting presenting the A/B test results from this first A/B test. And I remember one of the comments that was made by a very high up executive was, leadership won't approve. And I was like, but like very high leadership in the organization, like an individual that I would not talk to in my day-to-day or even in my like month-to-month. Right. And I remember thinking like, they won't approve of metrics that increasing. Like it was mind-boggling, but like there was more to it than that. Like it wasn't that they wouldn't approve that we were actually increasing business and product metrics with this new feature and we had data to support it. They wouldn't approve of the change because of the like subsequent factors associated with that change. So again, it's so much more, but that's why the Trojan horse analogy comes into play. Like we just needed to get it in there and then collect the data and then navigate the emotions after that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like recognize that there's emotions there. And then like there's lots of ways to handle emotions, but that recognize that they're there. It's not that's right. Like what I hear you saying is like the engineering isn't necessarily the hardest part.
It's not. That's the interesting aspect. And like one of the ways to navigate that we did is we brought anyone who was interested or anyone that did not like was not obsessed with the feature as much as we were, we brought them along. Like make them part of the journey, take their input, incorporate it into an A/B test. You have a thought, okay, let's A/B test it. Like make them part of the experience so that they feel, so those emotions change, you know?
Right, rather than being told or being in the outside of something, when we feel like we're part of it, it can quelch some of the scary feelings because we're like, okay, wait a minute, I might have a say in this.
Right, and that's the beauty of A/B testing is anyone can kind of have a say in the product because any idea can be evaluated. Once you have the platform, literally anyone in the organization could say, I have an idea, as long, as the platform scales and the code works and all of these good things and, the product hypo makes sense. Anyone can be empowered to kind of make decisions.
I love that. Well, so we've talked about a few things, but what else should teams consider when building a platform like this?
I'd say definitely metrics are important. That was probably the hardest starting point for us. Was we didn't have all the data we wanted. So we really rely heavily on this notion of proxy metrics. So you're never going to have, so there's two things about metrics. One, we use metrics to measure how a change influences, key data points like business metrics, product metrics, user metrics, engineering system metrics. But also most of the time, like you're not going to have your perfect metric. You're not going to have your dream metric, or if you want your dream metric, it's going to take a while to orchestrate and implement, especially at a large scale. So sometimes like waiting for that metric is more harmful than just trying the idea out and getting like sample data points using, a proxy way of measuring what you want to measure. So I think the thing to think about is before you go into building your A/B testing platform is your data engineering infrastructure. Like how resilient is it? Do you have access to at least minimal data points? So like, for example, at Comcast, like if we don't have click-through rate, like if we don't understand if a user clicks and then there's an impression so we can have a ratio, maybe we just use video plays. Like maybe that's a proxy for understanding if we're influencing a key metric is video plays, or maybe we just use, clicks instead of click-through rate because we can't log impressions at the scale that we need to. So I think that is probably the top of mind before you go into this journey. Reflect on what data you have available and like where you can lean on proxy metrics if your perfect metrics aren't there.
Well, and it's interesting you're talking about too, like the data side of it too, and just how embedded this is into the engineering, what's already going on into engineering, and the importance of what the context is that you're operating in your current engineering environment.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Oh, sorry, I stepped over you. Yeah, it just sounds like, I mean, and my guess is that there's other pieces to that too, that the data is a really important, piece of that. Yeah. So, and we talked about this a little bit, but I want to go a little bit more deep on like what cultural shifts do companies need to make when it comes to A/B testing? We've talked about that they need to, but what are some cultural shifts to implement it?
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So culture. So the people aspect is harder for sure. Again, that's probably a theme in at least in our conversation, is the people aspect is harder than the engineering, I'd say. Getting to do this shift, getting folks to trust the data and trust the experimentation methodology does take time. You have to create like a new mindset that shifts from making decisions and launching decisions on their own accord, or on like whatever the title is of the person that is making that decision, to creating a hypothesis, creating a prediction, evaluating it, and then letting data help influence the direction thereafter. So culturally, if you want to embrace experimentation, I think you have to be curious. You have to like not assume you're always right. Like assume, I mean, hope that you are, but it's okay if you're wrong. Like there is really no such thing as a failed A/B test. If it's, you know, if the metrics don't go in the direction that you expect, it's not a failure. It's you just gained a bunch of new insights that you didn't know before. So that's a win. Like if you're learning, you're winning. If you're not learning, you're not winning. And like simply counting the number of features deployed, that's not a way to measure an organization. But, you know, measuring how your features are influencing important data points like metrics, that is a way to measure the effectiveness of a product or engineering organization. And that is part of the culture shift. It's like, what are your product and engineers incentivized by? Like, do they need to get this feature out the door at all costs, or do they need to increase a metric?
Yeah, what's the incentives there, and how does this play into what's already existing?
Like, which is like everything in life. Like, what do people care about? And then how do you make sure like that's incorporated into whatever change you're making happen?
It's great advice though, to remember that it applies here as well. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but I'd love to know a little bit more, like what were some of the biggest organizational challenges you faced at Comcast trying to introduce this, besides maybe some of the things we've talked about? Like I think about, I'm curious about sponsorship, executive sponsorship, who approved of this, who didn't, how far, you know what I mean? Who did you need to get the yes from to do this?
Yeah. I mean, for this test, it went as up as the CTO. Like the CTO was like, that's how, it was a really big catalyst for change, this first A/B test. But yeah, executive sponsorship plays a huge role. That's actually one of the points I make in the book. I think it's like in the last chapter, is go as high up as you can go. Like get sponsorship as high up as you, because that will speed up the process of creating an experimentation-driven mindset or culture. As for challenges, it was persistent. Like again, it took a year, and it took a year to, like, I had so many pitch decks. Like I had like a different pitch deck for a different type of organization, like depending on who I was talking to regarding the For You homepage. Like our goal was twofold. We wanted to launch the For You homepage, and we used, you know, A/B testing as our Trojan horse. But then our other goal was to like increase adoption of A/B testing in this product engineering organization. So depending on who you're talking to, you kind of shift how you're pitching that. So if I'm talking to business folks, I'm going to say, yeah, we can measure revenue. We can measure how revenue increases as part of the A/B testing platform. If I'm talking to product folks, I can say like, yeah, we can measure like engagement with your product, like how many times people click or see it or they impressed upon it. So I think the biggest challenge in general is just being persistent and knowing who your audience is, and knowing to shape shift that story, because A/B testing does serve the needs of all. That's the thing. It's not just for product people. It's not just for business people. It's also for engineers. Like if you want to reduce the number of unused code in your product, measure it with data. See, is this feature even being used? If it's not, like delete it, get it out. You know, it's just adding to like your test coverage. It's adding to like the amount of maintenance you have. And again, A/B tests can serve that as well.
Well, it's so interesting. One of the things that you said there that stuck out to me is that you created pitch decks, multiple.
Oh, yeah.
I think that might have surprised people too. Like, wait, pitch deck? And now
Yeah.
Comcast is a bigger organization. Maybe a smaller organization wouldn't need to do that. But I think it speaks to you need to sell this idea.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is like, it's very platform team 101. When you're building a platform, you have to persuade people to use your platform. And that, yeah, pitch decks. It's ironic. I felt like I was both an engineering leader, but also a product person, but also like a salesperson. I truly felt like I was selling them the vision of A/B testing. Where I'd go back to my engineering team and they'd be like, this really needs to be sold. It's kind of obvious. But again, when you're changing process and you're changing the way like a product that's in the hands of millions of users is being used, you do have to convince them.
So when you talked to, I want to go back because I'm not clear. When you talked about it took a year for that, was part of that year process to run the first test, was part of it also the selling, or was the
100%.
selling even before? Yeah, it was the selling was part of that 1 year process.
Yeah, we didn't start selling until the A/B test started. Like we had our driving use case was For You homepage, but we also knew, hey, this is the first A/B test on this product. Like, how is that going to be received? Like, how is it going to be received to all of a sudden? Like, we're not just putting features in production. And like, granted, like we couldn't. Again, we were the team that features weren't going into production, so we had ulterior motives to change that up. But yeah, that year was a combination of For You homepage launched, A/B test platform built, and then literally like 9 months convincing, hey, the tests are good, like the results are good, the data is good. Like I can tell you, like one aspect of that was at the beginning of our when we first launched our A/B test, our first set of metrics, or the first like analysis report didn't incorporate revenue. Like it didn't incorporate business oriented metrics. And so that's something that we changed. Like if the next time we pitched it, the next time we showed that the results, we incorporated revenue. Because again, we didn't know our audience as well. But that's the thing, like testing, evaluation, experimentation can meet the needs of like a wide range of audiences.
That's great. I'm curious about what you personally learned in this process. Like for you, like in your career, I'm just curious what you personally learned by doing this whole, it seems like a very long process.
It was really which is why I wrote a book about it.
Right. Well, and what was like maybe something that was a personal learning for you?
Oh man, I learned so much. I mean, it's everything that you kind of pointed at, like executive sponsorship goes a long way. Sometimes you have to be bold. And when you're bold and you're making change, you're not going to get there. You're not going to make friends, and that's okay. But then you will make friends too at the end. Like I feel like I definitely was like shaking feathers. I don't know, is that a phrase? Like I was definitely shaking the tree or something.
There was some shaking and some movement and things falling
exactly.
out.
And you kind of have to be okay with that. Like it's risky pushing change that's so big, and especially in the way that decisions are made on a product. And this product has like 50 chefs. Like it's a big undertaking. I'd say the biggest lesson I learned is that it is thrilling to go from 0 to 1. Like we literally went from no A/B testing to A/B testing, and that process, you learn so much. Your team really gets behind you when you believe in it. Like at all costs, we believed in this feature, and it was inspiring. It's like it's not something that happens often. Usually, when you're at an organization, you build these one-off features. You add incremental updates. And being able to do that it was a luxury. Like I feel like to this day, like I don't work there anymore. I like work at Spotify, but I take a lot of those learnings everywhere I go.
That's so great. I am curious, when you said you have to be bold, what do you mean by you have to be bold in this process? What does that look like?
Well, what is that in practice? What it looks like? It looks like, messaging the, senior VP of the organization on Slack saying, why aren't we launching this A/B test? Like we have data, why aren't we launching it? That takes boldness. In practice, boldness means having all of those variations of a pitch deck and going into those rooms saying, I believe in this feature, why don't you?
That's bold.
I remember having visualizations in my head. Like I was like, I don't really, I haven't really seen this movie, The Matrix, but like there's this, there's a character that's like dodging, like, like
Neo.
yeah, sure.
The Matrix is my favorite movie, and I just rewatched it this weekend. That's Neo.
Okay.
He's dodging bullets.
Yeah, so like you pretty much have to dodge comments and let it like get off of you. Like if one person says like, yeah, that's not going anywhere, you just have to like let it go and keep pushing forward. And that takes boldness, it takes courage, you know?
I think that's really helpful and inspiring for people to think about maybe what are some of the challenges they might face. So I guess I just have, one last question, bringing it back around. We talked in the beginning about like places like this. This book isn't necessarily for Spotify, and you are now at Spotify. I would be really curious, what's A/B testing like at Spotify?
Oh man, it's so different. The experimentation culture, it's wonderful. It's like the question isn't ever, do we A/B test? That's never the question. It's like, it's just a matter of when is the feature ready to be evaluated? Do we do a floor test where it's like minimal implementation and then we just get better and better and better? Or do we, build out the feature a little bit more? I'd say like at a company like Spotify, it is more risky to not A/B test. Like that is more risky than taking the time to evaluate a feature and like having folks not agree with that feature, et cetera. It's just a natural part of the product development life cycle, which is awesome.
When you started this, cool questions always come to my mind. When you started this process, did you ever expect that A/B testing would become like this for you, or that you'd write a book about it?
Definitely not. No, I remember when I like worked at Comcast, I made an intentional pivot to the to the personalization A/B testing team, because I wanted to get experience, not just in the like domain of Comcast, because I was really good. I really understood the domain. Like I really understood video, TV shows, metadata, availability. I was like, I need to get good at something that like is valuable outside of this company. And I was like, A/B testing. Everyone does A/B testing. Like I will pivot to that. And then I didn't realize how fascinating it would be. Like it just applies to everything in life. There's A/B testing in the medical industry, such as clinical trials. There's like, I A/B test like my coffee every other day as a joke. I mean, I don't actually do it, but like, we evaluate we evaluate our decisions made, and then we like make better decisions. So no, I definitely didn't think it'd be a huge aspect of my life. I mean, I run an A/B testing team at Spotify now, like for the homepage. I think it's the coolest part of software development, is seeing whether the feature that you built, is it legit? Does it increase metrics? Does it decrease metrics? Like what's cooler than that?
And it sounds like that's a surprise, but now you feel like you've really found your place, your spot that, right? Like that's a place that's really a big, your niche. Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I'm reaching for that. Well, before we go, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think folks will learn from the book, or something in the book that you think, or about the process that we haven't covered yet that's really important?
I think we covered this, but it's worth reiterating, is you really can do a lot with really little. So like, let's say you're like totally stressed and you're like, we have nothing right now. You might actually have something. So like an example is like, if you have a feature flag system, if you have feature flag, you can extend that to cover the A/B testing methodology. Like a feature flag is like, this feature is only available for these set of users, and we're incrementally increasing that. And kind of extend that same logic of tagging users to have this new feature or this new capability available, but extend it to actually measuring the output. Or like in the example at Comcast, like we didn't actually start from scratch. We had a system that tagged users to identify what type of content was available for them. So like you as a user, you have HBO available. I would have, because that's part of your subscription. And I would have like, I don't know, Stars or whatever, name some other premium subscription. We extended that platform to then be like, okay, we already have a way to tag users. We already have a way to create user segments. Let's build on top of that. So I think if you're thinking about incorporating A/B testing, think about like what you have today and how you can kind of slightly extend it so that you're not starting from scratch.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, look around and see what else you have that you can pick up
Build on
and
top
use.
of
It's or build on top of that's already part of the
the
engineering stack,
ecosystem.
the culture, the ecosystem, all of
It's
that.
already trusted. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that one of the things that underscores is like just the whole idea of trust. I think that's one of the things that I hear you talk a lot about is like, do people trust?
It has to be trusted. Otherwise, you're not gonna make a decision based on it, you know?
Right. And I think we might think, well, of course it's going to be trusted, but that's not automatic.
No, especially when there's emotions behind it.
Yep. Well, everyone who knows me knows I'm like, let's talk about emotions because we are humans and that's who's operating all these systems and they can get in the way and we forget them all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us for the session. Leemay will be joining us over on the LeadDev Slack where she'll be taking some questions. So you can head over to Bookmarked channel where that will be taking place. Our next session is on February 7th, where we'll be speaking with Emma Bastian about decoding the technical interview process. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.